In 410 AD, the Western Roman Empire left the province of Britannia in ruins and its own hands. But the sea raids from the Saxons, Utes, and the Anglo tribes, combined with the internal wars between one another, caused the once united land to be now divided into many tribal kingdoms and duchies alike. Now, it is 476 AD. 66 years had passed since Rome left Britain. The Western Roman Empire is currently plunged in its internal strives. Some Roman provinces are either under the new Germanic rule or are independent, eager or weak to defend against the migrating hordes from Germania. While that, a young man rises up to power somewhere in the middle of a certain Romano-British tribe, born from a descendant of the late governor of Britannia. His name was Katavnus, of House Apollinaris, a skilled 16-year-old Romano-British warrior who has been chosen by the late chieftain who saw the young boy as someone who could not just wipe out the Saxons or any other German on the way, but who could also restore in the British Isles, make himself a name that would be spoken throughout centuries. This is the story of Roman Britannia and CK2's mod when the world stopped making sense. Now, it is 476 AD. 66 years had passed since Rome left Britain. The Western Roman Empire is currently plunged in its internal strives. Some Roman provinces are either under the new Germanic rule or are independent, eager or weak to defend against the migrating hordes from Germania. While that, a young man rises up to power somewhere in the middle of a certain Romano-British tribe, born from a descendant of the late governor of Britannia. His name was Katavnus, of House Apollinaris, a skilled 16-year-old Romano-British warrior who has been chosen by the late chieftain who saw the young boy as someone who could not just wipe out the Saxons or any other German on the way, but who could also restore in the British Isles, make himself a name that would be spoken throughout centuries. This is the story of Roman Britannia and CK2's mod when the world stopped making sense. So, after Katavnus consolidated his power over his tribe, he began his plans to drive out the Germanics away from Britain, so that he could focus on his Romano-British neighbors who could eventually become his rivals even after him. The first battle that Katavnus fought was at Stafford in September of 477 against the Anglo tribe of Riding. Under their chieftain, they tried to siege down Alanua, only to be caught by the numerically and strategically superior forces of Katavnus. The battle ended faster as it began, with Katavnus only suffering 11 casualties, whilst the Angles lost 91 men and were routed away. And after half of the year later, and the war was won, and Hrodberht, the Judith chieftain, was exiled. Despite this victory, Katavnus sought to rest his men and prepare for a new campaign, alongside with recovering and rebuilding the newly reconquered Lactodorum. However, on spring of 479, the Germanics began to raid Aelia Castra, but Katavnus, experienced commander and good warrior, gathered his force. Despite the Romano-Britons being smaller in numbers, his soldiers were experienced, unlike the Germanics who had more levies and untrained recruits rather than professional soldiers. But that wasn't even enough. And in September of that same year, the Angles tried to raid Lactodurum with a large army, seeking to plunder and loot like the raids before. Katavnus, even with his smaller sizes, still beat the Germanics, driving them away and humiliating one of the captured Angle commanders. This could not continue. Either Katavnus drives the Germanics away from Britain for good, or it's over for him and the Romano-Britons. So, when the Germanics from Essex tried to raid, Katavnus gathered mercenaries that he hired before, and his men, and the men of his vassals, to declare war on Essex, in an attempt to drive the Angles, Saxons, and Utahs alike out of the island. But at the Battle of Verulamium, one of the Germanic commanders was seen, and Katavnus, despite being young but a experienced commander, decided to test his strength. Soon a duel broke out, and it ended fast with killing Eberhard, the Germanic commander, with a spear to the eye. With the loss of one of their commanders, the Germanics ran in panic, defeated and forever weakened. With Londinium back in its power of its true holder, Katavnus let his men rest again to deal with the minor raids from the Germanics from the north or from Kent, educating his children thanks to his wives, and preparing to reconquer Kent itself and its settler lands, as the Romano-Britons, seeing what Katavnus was doing, were also eager to reconquer the lands from the Germanics. Years and almost a decade later, in middle of 490s AD, the Anglo-Saxon Utah tribes were either expelled from Britannia for good or were under the Romano-British occupation by Katavnus and etc. Romano-British tribe chieftains. But after fighting the Romano-British Duke of Elmet, Katavnus proclaimed himself as King of Prydain or Kinwildion, or just the King of Britannia. However, the tales of a deadly plague came from the east. The Black Death, or how it was also referred as the bubonic plague, has arrived in the eastern Mediterranean, and it plundered and ravaged in the Eastern Roman Empire, Sassanid Empire, Caucasian kingdoms, and Arabian tribes. And it doesn't seem to stop. It wishes to go further west. Even with the plague spreading to Britain, Katavnus forced Cornwall by war to vassalize, expanding the kingdom to the southwest of it, securing new borders with the Romano-Britons in or near Wales. While the counts of the realm were dying, even the child count of the Iceni died by the plague, the Apollinares family didn't suffer, well, that much, because when the plague arrived in Cantium or Kent, King Katavnus issued to lock the palace doors to prevent anyone getting in or out of it for sanitation purposes. This worked well. In order to bring up more In order to bring up more strength of the kingdom, Katavnus creates his personal retinue of professional soldiers. It was mainly consisted of light infantry and light cavalry, but it soon expanded with his son and heir continuing his job. Despite the revolts, fading of the plague, some members of the dynasty died away, like the eldest daughter of Katavnus alongside with her husband in Illyria, which proclaimed itself as the Western Roman Empire. In his, in his last years, Katavnus was educating his children, keeping eye on his bastard children that he made with a commoner long ago, and in 535 AD, at his 75th year of age, Katavnus passed. His son, Massimiano, now rules. Despite that some parts of the ram were split, they would be all soon recovered and westernized, but that's another story for another time. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, share, comment, and well, see you next time. Bye.